Everything you see is edible. It has to be to qualify for the second annual Glensheen Gingerbread House Contest. 11 people spent hours creating their structures and could get a private party at Glensheen by winning. Prizes are handed out for first place, runner-up, best use of detail, and People's Choice. The People's Choice balloting isn't over, so even though the judges made their pick today, the winner's name won't be released for another week. Making one of these houses isn't a matter of throwing some dough in the oven and having a house jump out like the gingerbread man.
It takes a lot of creativity, as you can see here, and it takes a lot of time and effort. Some people spent 2 weeks making their houses. Other people concentrated their time and spent maybe 60 to 80 hours creating a house.
One of the tricks to making a house that lights up is figuring out how to keep the lights from melting the walls or the roof. And only the base can be non-edible.
You can use a lot of the ingredients that you have in your house, because to make gingerbread you're using basic ingredients like flour and sugar. But a lot of the detail work, if you're using little gummy bears, it's a type of candy for decorations or special decorations, you might have to purchase those. So it can get quite expensive.
This year's theme is the magic of Christmas. At Glensheen, Paul Moore, TV6 News.
Okay, here. Here it is. Got it.
The city came to the rescue of downtown business owners this summer by installing parking meters along Superior Street. Now those meters are gone, and that has some business owners worried about their futures. Next February, the parking ramp next to the Fond du Lac Gaming Casino will be finished and open, providing over 300 new spaces.
The parking ramp is known as long-term parking. Meters are short-term parking. Our area, more so than the core area downtown around the Holiday and so forth, is in need of on-street short-term parking.
Other business owners are looking at alternatives. The newest business on Superior Street has seen a drop in clients since the meters were taken out. For them, it's a simple fact of survival.
There's a vacant lot next to me that the city owns. I volunteered to pay for the improvements to make it a parking lot, and the city could lease it to me for 100 years or something like that, and they could put the meters on it or something. But we have to do something, or it's a question of survival.
Monday night, the Duluth City Council will take a look at the Superior Street parking situation in an attempt to figure out a solution that will please everyone. Brian Allen, TV6 News.
Of the International Reading Association.
Thank you. On behalf of our reading council.
Said is children's literature. Trade books, and they'd be selecting their own books, but she does not have something else, and I'm going to tell you about that later. But
we're one of 3 charter members in the state of Wisconsin to receive this award, and we're one of 55 in the entire United States.
From the beginning to the end, but they're choosing the best selection. Children's writing all over the school, and children doing that writing all over the school, and you can see that it goes on.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm collecting for the food shelf for Project Share. Do you have anything you would like to contribute?
Sure, we give you something.
Okay.
The spirit of giving is usually at its peak this time of year, and for the 6th year in a row, the Share Food Drive is making the most of it. With bags in hand, volunteers combed the city of Duluth today, determined to make this year's drive even more successful than last. And with every year, volunteers can barely keep up.
The situation at the area food shelf seems to get worse every year. You know, as you indicated, a one-shot deal was what we thought the first year we did this, and to be here 5 years later doing it for the 6th time and knowing that the situation is worse last year or this year than last.
This year, Share is working even harder to knock on doors and stack up area food shelves because more families are using them.
The numbers are increasing so much that we've had to limit visits a family, the number of times a family can come to the food shelf, from 4 times in 6 months to 3, and yet our numbers have hardly decreased at all. So the numbers continue to climb.
Share will be back out on the streets tomorrow, filling up bags with food and money that will eventually make it into needy homes for the holidays. And if you missed a volunteer at your door, Share says it's not too late.
If you don't get hit, donate at your local grocery store.
Coincidence. I'll say hi, Ma.
Moorhead police say the boy was playing with 4 friends when the accident happened. Eyewitnesses say the boy chased a squirrel onto the ice and fell through. His 3 friends with him tried unsuccessfully to rescue him with tree branches from the riverbank. Another boy fell through up to his thighs but managed to get out. The boy's family waited for any discoveries. Rescue teams probed the river bottom for 35 minutes.
I got something, Kate. Here. Here it is. Got it.
Shortly before 5, the boy was found, and the scramble to save him began.
It had been somewhere around 4:20, somewhere in there. Got a report that there was a boy in a river, across the river from the Moorhead high-rise. When we arrived on the scene, Moorhead had a boat down here already. They were chopping on the ice, and we launched the boat and we assisted Moorhead in chopping through the ice.
The boy is from a Hispanic family that speaks very little English. It's not known whether he knew or understood that the ice was not safe. Ross Kirchis, News 11.
I got something, Kate. Here. Here it is. Got it. Get us in. Move the image by the way. Here, you're going to get a chance, boy. Get over that park. Okay, go. Okay, that's good. Come on, Jim. Grab my jacket. You're coming. Come on, Jim. Jim and everybody. Obviously, they're rushing to the end.
Ross, closer, get closer. Get in there, get in there, get in there.
Well, he just pulled the body out. No, he's not 4 years old, that's for sure.
He's not 4 years old.
Like 8 or something. Yeah, you can't judge.
Okay, how long has he been in the water?
I have no idea. I have not had a chance to talk.
I know, we have to do a phone. That's what
I around somebody up here.
Well, we're not going to do a phone or a radio two-way because we can't get a signal.
All right. Far away.
Okay.
So you can go right up there. Keep her moving. Right around the table corner. Carry. Wait.
We'll find out on the news.
I guess. The body was found about, I'd say 15 feet from shore and about 10, 12 feet of water.
And you say right now, of course, in a drowning such as this, you do have some things going for you despite the tragedy. It's possible you could revive the child.
Yes, with a cold water drowning like this, we stand a real good chance in reviving the child with no ill effects whatsoever on the child.
Do you have any idea whether he was breathing or not at all?
No, he wasn't breathing when they brought him up, I'm sure.
Any guesstimate as to the amount of minutes he was down?
I would say somewhere around 30 minutes to 40 minutes.
Why was he out in the river?
I've got no idea.
The St. Louis County chapter of Mothers Against Drunk Drivers held a candlelight vigil tonight to remember those who were killed or injured by alcohol or drug-related accidents. Patty Wheeler, the vigil's coordinator, says a number of steps have to be taken in order to turn the situation around.
There have to be three elements. There has to be apprehension, there has to be a very good chance that you'll be caught, and if you're caught, there has to be a good chance you'll be convicted, and thirdly, there has to be some type of punishment or consequences to your actions. And that's where we fall apart in this country. And here in Duluth, our police are doing their job, but the city prosecuting attorney's office and the courthouse is not.
Wheeler says she got involved with MAD because of a tragedy in her own life.
My first husband was killed by a drunk driver. He was on his way to work at 6:30 on a Thursday morning and was hit head-on and killed instantly.
Those who had lost someone or knew someone injured in an accident lit a candle in their name. The vigil was also a symbol of remembering a loved one as a person and not just another traffic statistic. About 25 people attended the vigil. MAD held similar vigils across the state of Minnesota today. Lori Kress, TV6 News.
The Duluth Police Department is looking to have stricter rules placed on the sale of pull tabs. A proposed ordinance change will receive the City Council's attention tomorrow night.
There needs to be some more rules that are uniform rules from establishment to establishment. And that's one of the things that the police department is asking for. But I think the unwillingness on the part of the administration to work with the local charities is unreasonable.
If the ordinance passes, players will be limited to 20 cards per play, and winners will have only 15 minutes to collect their cash. The new law would also allow operators to ask players for proof of age. Operators agree that stricter regulations should be placed on the games, and they will cooperate with the police department's request.
The police department wants to limit the number of pull tabs a person can buy and how a person can just hold them for 15 minutes before cashing them in. And I think those things are a little bit more frivolous. And I think that those specifics can be ironed out. The operators of the charitable groups don't want that.
If the new changes in the ordinance pass, Atkins is concerned about the enforcement of the new rules.
You know, you can't enforce saying to somebody, you've got 15 minutes to turn in your things. Who's going to keep time? Are you going to have a timekeeper?
Brian Allen, TV6 News.
We thought that it wouldn't be quite this busy. It was very busy. We've had all of our registers going most of the day, and we've had long lines earlier in the day, and it's kind of slacked off now. We're hoping that every Sunday will be like this. It's been great.
My day of confirmation and confession of faith in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior brought the first flickering consciousness of God's call to full-time service in His name. Participants, thank you for sharing your talents. The musicians, my son Mark and his friend April, my son Bill and his wife Deanne.
Nearly 30 people gathered in Duluth this morning on the 46th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. A short program sponsored by VFW Post 137 opened with prayer and the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance. After a few remarks, the program moved outside.
Fire!
The ceremony was highlighted as Jim Cutin tossed a symbolic wreath onto the water. Cutin was in Pearl Harbor at the time of the attack and remembers it well.
Well, I was only 18 years old, and I was a baker striker, and I was putting a pan of cookies in the oven when the first bomb went off. And it didn't last all that long, and You're at 18. You're not too analyzing things. I was just running around and I participated in it. I didn't really get hurt. I got some bomb concussion, but that's about all.
The group also took a moment to remember the first Duluthian killed in the attack, Sergeant Andrew Wazinski. This is the 6th year Post 137 has held such a ceremony. They are hoping it will prompt more people to take time to remember those who died so that we could be here today. The ceremony had ended. Past Commander Les Flesher thanked the people for coming and said, "May we meet again here next year in a world of peace." On the Duluth waterfront, Patty Baker, TV6 News.
There hasn't been much cause for Duluth to pull out its heavy snow equipment this winter, but no one's really complaining, including the city, which is enjoying the money it's saving in sand and overtime.
If the weather continues, it will be a good year for our division.
Each winter, the street department goes through thousands of yards of sand, which it has stockpiled at 3 sites around town. Normally, it doesn't go through its entire supply, but in the winter of 1969, it wouldn't have made any difference how much sand the city had.
It snowed right up until January 20th and then quit. And we were to the point where we could not even push it back on the side streets or in the alleys or any place to deposit that snow. And if it would have snowed anymore, I think we'd have just had to close streets that year.
Whatever happens this winter, the city, like always, will try to be ready as best it can with equipment and sand. So here it sits, 20,000 yards of sand, just waiting for Mother Nature to decide if it should be used. Chances are, knowing northern Minnesota's winters, it will be. Steve Karsten, TV6 News.
The slump in the steel industry has hit the Iron Range hard. Butler Taconite has shut its doors permanently, and though there are tentative plans to possibly reopen Reserve in Silver Bay, many experts are extremely skeptical it can survive. A study done for Payne Weber last spring predicted lack of demand will soon force all but 3 of the Iron Range mines to close. But a study released by the University of Minnesota Duluth today says that won't happen.
Certainly it's not going to go down to 3 mines, as some have suggested. It will be dictated, we would say, primarily on the ownership patterns.
The Payne Weber study said it would be more economical to have only 3 mines producing just enough taconite to meet the demand, keeping overhead costs down and therefore the price. But UMD economists say because the steel industry is so competitive, they don't believe that system would work. As it stands now, each of the 6 operating mines is owned wholly or in part by steel companies. That way, each steel company has a supply of taconite at its beck and call. The economists say a taconite source which the steel companies couldn't control would be a risk most wouldn't be willing to take. Barbara Riles, TV6 News.
Pull tabs are a new craze in Duluth bar rooms. Charitable organizations can pull in big bucks for their causes, but it's causing problems for law enforcement officials. The police department wants to regulate barroom pull tabs by saying you can only buy 20 cards at a time. You have to be 18 years old and you can only use cash. The chief executive of the Moose Lodge 505 says the police regulations are a conflict of interest.
Well, the city council, or the city of Duluth, has an interest in the Fond Duluth Gaming Casino.
And the city of Duluth has come up with a set of rules and regulations, and I do feel we need rules and regulations, but they're going to limit our ability to sell pull tabs. But meanwhile, the Fond du Luth Gaming Casino, which I said before they have a partnership in, is going to go unrestricted.
Ekmark says if the gaming casino voluntarily adopted the same rules, he wouldn't be upset. In the meantime, another pull tab operator says he doesn't think the rules will make a difference. His organization uses most of them already. The Irving Hockey Association is able to pull in $60,000 to $70,000 a year, which leaves it a lot better off than it was before.
That's what's nice about this, the hockey parents don't have to sell soaps or popcorn or, have the little kids out selling things, which, that's one of the benefits of the pull tab.
With the proceeds from last year, Irving Hockey got a new ice sweeper. Next year, league officials are thinking about enclosing a rink with a roof. There's no way of telling which way the city council will vote tonight. Pull tab business has been an economic bonanza for charitable organizations, but a headache for the police department. If the city council passes the new rules tonight, a compromise could be reached. Lori Kress, TV6 News.
It's hard to imagine any good coming of a scene like this. In July of 1986, the early morning calm of the Twin Cities suburb of Mounds View was shattered by an explosion in an underground gasoline pipeline. 2 were killed, and in the confusion that followed the tragedy, it became evident that few knew the pipeline was even there or what it carried. Attention was focused on a myriad of pipelines buried throughout the state, many carrying hazardous materials.
The state does not have its act together at this particular time to certify that the Duluth system, as an example, is up to code. We do not believe that there's any dangerous situation out there, but at the same time, we need to put this plan together to ensure the public safety.
The legislature has now created an agency to keep track of pipeline safety. The new director is in Duluth, beginning a 16-city tour of the state. Duluth pipelines carry natural gas, not gasoline as in Mounds View, but water and gas officials welcome the new organization.
Not only for our utility, but I think for all utilities in the state, we're finally going to end up with a uniform, systematic, state mandated and operated inspection system for all the utilities in the state. We hope to end up with an even safer system than we have right now.
One of the key elements of the new agency will be a one-call telephone number for contractors, so that before there is any digging, nearby utilities can mark the pipelines below. The agency will also step up pipeline inspections.
It will be 6 to 8 months before the system is in place, with an annual budget of over $200,000 a year. At least part of that budget will be picked up by consumers. Dave Jench, TV6 News.
We're looking for an opportunity to review the other provisions of Chapter 48, other sections that are affected by that whole philosophical change as to who's responsible. I want to make sure that we get an ordinance that the department and our customers can both understand what's in it and it works for us.
The Veterans Administration gives people who have had problems that are not the result of their own willful misconduct more time to use their educational benefits, but it does not accept alcoholism as such a problem.
When you're looking at a disease like alcoholism, they more than likely are not going to look at that as totally disabling.
If the Supreme Court decides alcoholism is a disease in the legal sense, the VA could end up shelling out a lot of money in payments. And if the court decides otherwise, the whole way alcoholism is treated could be changed. Miller Dwan is just one of many places an alcoholic can get treatment in Duluth. Its counselors consider problem drinking a disease, and they say if that's erased, it would discourage many from getting help.
It would hurt, I guess from my perspective, it would hurt those folks who we've been struggling for so long to try to look at what they've got, and feeling helpless and sometimes hopeless about what's going on with them, their drinking, and why can't they just stop like everybody else? It would put them more in a moral category of being wrong and bad than being sick and needing help.
And if alcoholism isn't considered a disease, insurance companies may be able to stop paying for treatment. That would mean Miller Dwan's chemical dependency unit, like most others, would be empty of people who can't afford help on their own. Julie Howard, TV6 News.
We do not believe there are any survivors. We're in the process of notifying the crew members' families that they were on board, but we can't confirm anything at this point.
Are the crew from here by any chance? Or
I don't know where they're from. There is a room where they're making those calls, and once we have that information, as the names of the passengers have been notified, we will certainly pass that information on.
Are you
Commission 2 in 08, where you have the minutes from the housing and...
Those are the fellows who are out on the beat who are very much aware of the problems that have been incorporated into the city and that the police department is facing each day since the inception of the pull tab operations.
Alvaro Garza Jr. is still in critical condition, but miraculously, he will live. While doctors don't promise there is no brain damage, there is hope he will recover completely. His father and mother, who have been by his side since the accident, express both gratitude and pain at what they've been through.
At first, they told me that he had only a 1%, and I started praying and praying and praying, and I think God will help me and to put his arms around Junior. So I wanted him to get well again. Thank God he did.
It's hard, really, go down there and see him how he is. And, well, really, I didn't expect something like that.
The Garza's younger son, 9-year-old Tony, doesn't really understand what has happened, but he was there that day to witness the accident and the dramatic rescue of his brother. The Garzas have not been alone during this trying time. They've even received dozens of letters from anonymous Fargo 5th graders. For example, "Dear parents, I hope your child will live and be healthy." Much of the Garza's emotional support has come from relatives who came from as far away as Texas to be with the family. In a news conference today, doctors said that Alvaro's condition is stable, but they will know more about his progress after anesthesia from surgery this morning wears off and they can check his responses.
For 2.5 hours this morning, Target opened its doors to exclusive customers. It provided what management called hassle-free shopping for the customers and a good time for the workers.
Not only the senior citizens, but the handicapped come in here, and it gives us a good feeling that they're enjoying themselves.
There were bonuses involved in the event. Presents were wrapped free. A 10% discount card was given to all customers, and even some transportation was courtesy of Target. There were even tokens provided.
If they go out of the store, there's a little package at each register, which we have full of all surprise gifts that we've taken from the store.
This has been a special event for Target stores across the country for 13 years. And though Target has been preparing for this for a few weeks now, workers say it's worth it. In Duluth, Ann Kavanaugh, TV6 News.
We are happy that there are that many parents who have stated that they would send their students to this school, and we think it's a good choice because the school really has an exceptional program. Is going to offer something really special to students and to families.
The problem that we had before was a threefold problem. That problem was that we had one bridge accessing the cities. We had a differentiation of ages between Duluth and Superior, and we had later hours here. Two of those problems have been addressed. The third problem still remains, later hours within the city.
Shooting some video.
In a special Superior City Council meeting, Mayor Herb Bergson asked the council and Superior residents to decide if they should try to obtain the Navy ship, Newport News. One resident was not in favor of the ship locating in Superior because of toxins on board.
USS Newport News is in such bad shape that it's been likened to a bucket of bolts by some Duluth Council people. And there's been mention of the fact that there's lead paint that is very badly chipped, and of course the lead is harmful for human beings, and asbestos is as well. And
the council was allowed to view a videotape showing how much disrepair the vessel is in. Bergson says if the council decides to go after the ship, his next step is to go to Philadelphia and examine the news.
Will the city council be willing to allow us, the city officials, to tour the ship with an expert from Superior, a ship expert, someone who can go over that ship with a fine-tooth comb?
Superior is up against the clock if it wants to obtain the ship. The Navy League wants an answer from the city by January 1st. In Superior, Brian Allen, TV6 News.
I think the treaty is going to pass, and it's going to pass by a very substantial majority. I think most of the debate is not going to be around the contents of this treaty in terms of exactly what it does to intermediate range missiles. The debate is going to be around the vulnerability of the United States to the START negotiations.
As a senator, I've got the responsibility to work on amendments, on possible reservations, to go through the protocol. But right now I think we're going to concentrate on two areas. Number one, verification. We've got to know that we can verify this treaty. And number two, look at the area of conventional forces. By removing these weapons, we end up with the Soviets having a disproportionate advantage in conventional weapons, in tanks and jeeps and conventional weapons. And in the process of arms control, we've got to work now for that next step, to reduce the imbalance in conventional weapons so that there's more of a balance between the Warsaw Pact countries and the NATO countries.
Like this, to have younger skin.
This woman, Janet Ann Traynor, joined the study at Boston University Hospital with one goal in mind.
I just want to look as young as I am for as long as I can.
Janet Ann was a bona fide sun worshiper for 23 years, then realized her skin was paying the price. She tried all the over-the-counter moisturizers and then learned about the study involving this compound. It's called tretinoin emollient cream, a derivative of vitamin A. Preliminary studies show it reverses damage caused by chronic sun exposure.
It actually reverses many of the changes that occur when the individual is exposed over the years to sun. It just doesn't have a single change in the skin. It changes many of the various tissue structures in the skin.
Men and women joining the study have a patch of skin removed. It's studied under a microscope so doctors can measure the damage. An impression of the area near the eye is made, so several months from now doctors will know if any wrinkles have disappeared. Photos are also taken to document any change. These before and after pictures provided by the manufacturer of the compound are used by doctors to show it can work.
When combined with the use of sunscreens and possibly combined with a little more judicious lack of exposure to the sun, I think there is some expectation that the skin can look younger.
Janet Ann says if the cream doesn't work, she'll try something else.
The rest of it done, just zip, you know, just like that. Maybe it'll hear too.
Steve Karstjen, TV6 News.
We are potentially going to a local foundation and requesting well put.
The implication was that this proposed facility be completely and thoroughly studied and evaluated, and we as a committee were not allowed to do that.
I won't dispute that point at all. Putting it in a place where trucks would have to come at least 200 miles with this hazardous waste in order to dispose of it from all over the state just does not make sense to me.
The Carleton County Board took these pictures on a field trip to a hazardous disposal site north of Edmonton in Alberta, Canada. Board members were looking at the economic and environmental effects of an operational disposal plant. One official says most Canadians were happy with the plant, even those who had originally opposed it. The board chair says he also noticed some other important aspects.
The one thing that I noted was that it was a lot smaller facility than I had anticipated seeing. I expected to see large smokestacks and a horrendous amount of product to be treated, and we really didn't find that up there. The facility was extremely modern, extremely compact, and we saw very little product stored on site that had not been treated.
Many incentives are being used to lure counties into hosting the Minnesota Hazardous Waste Site. Jobs and tax levies provide economic incentives. But board members want to go slow and study the environmental effects. They will start holding informational meetings with Cromwell residents in January. The two proposed sites are in that area.
The reaction has been one to take a look at it, I guess, and not complete, not a flat-out no.
Lippo says once people know the options, they're willing to listen. Some of the hazardous materials include household products such as old motor oil. And if you don't want this hanging around your house, you can understand why the Carleton County Board wants to be careful it doesn't go into their environment. Lori Kress, TV6 News.
Business is picking up at Fitkers Mall in Duluth. The Christmas rush is part of it, but owners of the complex say more than anything it's better access to the shops. Owners of Fitkers are currently reorganizing under Chapter 11 after defaulting on nearly $10 million in loans from First Bank Minneapolis and the city of Duluth. Chief partner Clyde Pemble strongly assured Duluthians today that despite the owner's financial problems, Fitkers is here to stay.
The mall is here. It will remain here through our disputes. It will stay active, the doors will be open, the tenants will be doing business, and everything will continue as before.
Pemble blamed freeway construction for much of the business financial dilemma. He said for many months shoppers had next to no access to the shops, restaurants, and hotel. Though the partners knew there would be ongoing construction before they opened the mall, they said they were given faulty information regarding how long it would take and how restricted access would be. Pemble said he doesn't like lawsuits, but is considering some type of legal action against the state for what he called inaccurate information. The road in front of Fitkers opened to two-way traffic just last week.
Fitkers owners know a good Christmas sales rush isn't going to solve their problems, but at least now they say with two-way access, it's definitely going to make a difference. Barbara Riles, TV6 News.
On the outside, there is paint chipping off the vessel, and reports say it may be lead-based paint. On the inside, there are other reports that say pipes may be coated with asbestos and that it would have to be disposed of before it would come to Superior. But Mayor Herb Bergson says he knew that.
We didn't expect it to be in tip-top shape and a brand-new ship. We know that there are some problems and some things need to be fixed up.
Many city officials in Superior are serious about committing a spot to the vessel as a tourist attraction. A plan has already been drafted to put it right next to the Meteor on Barker's Island. But Bergson says he wants to give the council the final say on everything.
We're not going to lay this on the local taxpayers.
Navy League officials would like to place the Newport News before January, but Superior councilors say they don't want to make any commitments until questions about the ship are answered. In Superior, Ann Cavanaugh, TV6 News.
That we not add any new attractors, but continue with what we have, and make sure that those really work well. Because the parents have said that they are interested in what is now being offered and would send their students there for that reason.
The Eveleth Park Hotel is currently owned by the county, even though it never bought it. The hotel is riddled with problems. It has $95,000 in outstanding back property taxes and does not meet fire safety codes. It would cost about $100,000 to bring it up to code, making the decision on what to do with the property difficult for commissioners.
We are property owners of tax forfeited property right now. Do we want to continue to be landlords? And if we do decide that, how are we going to manage that property? With regard to the Park Hotel, will we put in the necessary renovations to the building and bring that building up to fire code? And then have the tenants remain there? Or will the county board decide not to renovate that building and bring it up to fire code, and we will ask the tenants then to vacate that premise?
Nearly 20 people live in the hotel, most on a full-time basis. If the building is destroyed, they will have to be moved elsewhere.
Yeah, I would like to see some kind of relocation monies for these people, especially at this time of year, the inconvenience to them, the fact that they have been tenants for a long period of time and they are primarily elderly people.
County commissioners have no idea how many more buildings will be tax forfeited in the future, but they have to make some tough decisions on what to do with them very quickly. In Eveleth, Julie Howard, TV6 News.
Minnesota spends over $5 billion each biennium on education and transportation, but it's not enough, says a report out of the state auditor's office. The report shows Minnesota lagging behind other states in education and transportation funding, two areas that will benefit it the most in the long run. At a news conference in Duluth this afternoon, State Auditor Arnie Carlson said it's time for the legislature to wise up.
I think the legislature and the governor and all policymakers, local level as well, have to shift their priorities so that the pattern begins to look more like it did in 1971.
Carlson says state and local spending on education has fallen below the national average from 47% in 1971 to 32.9% in 1985. The same is true for transportation. Minnesota ranks 35th in the nation in spending per mile on road maintenance. At the same time, it outdistances other states in spending on health and hospitals, natural resources, public buildings, and libraries, to name a few. Carlson says it makes it look like Minnesota is more interested in maintenance than it is in investment.
When you start to move money away from education, the perception that is commonly drawn is that the state is not looking towards its future. And I think that's just an absolute reality. And when business looks for the purpose of locating or expanding, it looks at research facilities, it looks at laboratory facilities, but overall it looks at the quality of education.
Carlson says it will be up to the next legislature to decide if Minnesota should begin changing its spending habits. It should be quite a debate. Steve Karstjen, TV6 News.
Investigating scenes where a death has taken place is the most critical work a law enforcement officer can do. There's a lot of room for errors because they attract so much attention, and time is of the essence.
Well, the most important thing is securing the scene to start out with, to make sure that nothing's added or subtracted from the scene that's going to destroy the evidence. And then going through and meticulously documenting the evidence and collecting it.
To make sure all officers know exactly how to handle death situations, seminars are sponsored periodically in Duluth. They bring law enforcement agents up to date on the latest investigative techniques, as well as help fine-tune the skills they already have. Such seminars are also helpful for prosecutors.
They are part of the same team as the law enforcement people are, and we do try to emphasize a team approach to every investigation, and particularly in a death investigation, as far as even understanding the collection of evidence and the necessity of a prosecutor being involved in that investigation day to day and as things materialize.
St. Louis County officials are no strangers to murder. The latest was the death of a Colorado woman whose body was found in this ditch. The FBI helped out in that case with its violent crime apprehension program, reinforcing the belief that solving crime is a team effort. In Duluth, Julie Howard, TV6 News.
From that form, we
have my pool partner go.
There's no reason to expect any problems. People, I believe, are a lot more responsible drinking, driving. The age at the present time to drink in Minnesota and Wisconsin is 21 years old. So I don't really think we should have too many problems. Let's get out and send our apologies, but at least we know we looked into it. If we cut some kind of a deal with the Navy League or with the Newport News people, and then when the ship gets to harbor, we realize, hey, it's going to cost $2 million to fix this boat, or it's going to cost $1 million instead of $500,000 to transport it, we have a problem. But that they have stated that they won't treat, or someone who has been involved with this type of thing to tour the ship.
They drew the outline of bodies on the bricks, they carried protest signs, and they held flowers, all to represent Central American refugees who have been deported, many who have since faced death. Representatives of the Pledge of Resistance, Duluth Interfaith Sanctuary Movement, and clergy and laity concerned today gathered outside of the Federal Building in Duluth to protest the U.S. policy in Central America. Their purpose is twofold: to oppose U.S. intervention, which they say is forcing thousands of people to flee their countries, and
to talk to the Immigration Service and impress upon them that their policy and practice of not allowing Guatemalans and El Salvadorans to stay in this country as political refugees is immoral and is not legal.
The group claims the 1980 Refugee Act passed by Congress is not being followed and makes it difficult for people to stay in this country. Today's protest is part of a week-long effort to draw attention to the issue by the College of St. Scholastica's Center for Peace and Justice. In the meantime, there is hope for some movement. A bill is currently in front of the Senate that would give people in El Salvador and Guatemala a 2-year temporary refugee status. This group is greatly in favor of the bill. They are urging the public to contact congressmen and ask them to vote in favor of it. At the Federal Building in Duluth, Patty Baker, TV6 News.
I'm sure that there are situations which occur with children which don't ever get reported, perhaps not even to parents. But I think that nevertheless, I think that the number of these kinds of circumstances in Superior is quite rare.
Delivery trucks have been arriving almost non-stop at the Sundew over the last few days. 180 gallons of milk will be stored on board for the trip to Miami. In the hold, more than 6 tons of non-perishable food has been stowed away. The Coast Guard can get a better price on bulk food in Duluth than it can in Miami, so as many provisions as possible have been purchased here. On deck, sailors practice mounting a .50 caliber machine gun, one of 2 which can be mounted on 4 newly installed gun mounts on the ship. Each of the Coast Guardsmen has been trained in using shotguns and M16 rifles in preparation for boarding suspected drug smugglers on the Caribbean Sea, and each sailor has been issued a .45 caliber pistol.
There are 2 strong emotions going on in this ship today. One is excitement as they stow away the supplies. The other is concern and anxiety for those they're leaving behind.
As a professional sailor, I look forward to it. It's going to be a challenge and some new operations, things that we don't do all the time. So in the professional aspect, I'm really looking forward to it. Certainly not looking forward to missing Christmas and the winter with my family.
The ship has been equipped with state-of-the-art technical equipment for navigation and vessel tracking. The Sundew will spend 4 months tracking suspected drug runners and boarding those ships and boats suspected of carrying drugs. The Duluth Coast Guard is the latest recruit in the President's intense war on drugs. Captain David Lorzell is confident his men have been well trained and can handle any situation, but he's still concerned for their safety.
There's times when in a war or in our jobs when we have to put our lives on the line, and we do, and that's why we're getting paid.
The Sundew leaves tomorrow and will be engaged in fighting the drug war until the middle of April. Barbara Riles, TV6 News.
And with regard to the collision damage waiver and car rentals, which is an issue. The timing of the closing is stressful to them. All of a sudden they find out that it's going to be more, or that it's not going to close on time. All of a sudden they're not going to have the commitment that they thought they had. And so it becomes a very big issue from the consumer's vantage point when it occurs.
In a short but informative tour of the DTI today, about 15 Minnesota senators were brought up to date on the needs of the school. And though it's too early to tell if the administration will get the funding it wants, lawmakers say this is the way to go about getting it.
So all of those visible signs are very helpful when we get sitting around tables in St. Paul trying to decide on what to spend the money for.
The DTI is asking for a total of almost $3 million. Part of the money would go to the Child Care and Family Education Center. It would also pay for changes in the telecommunications program. And though the school just got more than $2 million out of the last session, more is needed because the school has been shortchanged in the past.
The building was originally built 20 years ago to accommodate 750 students. As I told the senators, we have never had that small a number of students here.
Wickland says with enrollment double what it was 20 years ago, additions have to be made. Overall, Wickland says the changes would help not only the students, but families in the community as well. In Duluth, Ann Kavanaugh, TV6 News.
Don't let it lean.
The Challenge Center has gone into the Christmas tree business. Their greenhouse is now a tree house.
Our greenhouse is down during December, and we replant the last week of December, so we look for something basically that would work for us during December, utilize the space, and keep our people employed.
The Challenge Center helps out about 90 mentally disabled adults. 14 of them work in the greenhouse. Their first year of indoor farming has been a rough one. The Challenge Center started a tomato growing business last year, but vandals broke into this greenhouse and destroyed several thousand plants. They still sold 135,000 pounds of tomatoes, but the center lost $50,000.
That's a nice one. And that's a Scotch. Yep, that's a Scotch.
Selling Christmas trees should help them recoup some of those losses. Employees are excited about the new business venture.
Trees. Trees and tomatoes. They produce tomatoes. Is that what try them?
The Challenge Center has a goal of selling 400 trees. That would add a happy ending to what has been a troubled year. In Superior, Christy Arndt, TV6 News.
Go to school. Chocolate milk. Look at how good you can suck it up there now. Boy, oh boy. Is it pretty cold? Okay, let's go slow, hon. There you go. Good job.
I think he's talking about the ways by which devoting our resources to these more productive uses, putting people back to work, talking about the importance of education in this country, will demonstrate to people that these are the kinds of things that we need to build a strong national economy.
With bags of food in hand, students from across the city sang Christmas carols while marching together for a cause, to help the needy. Organizers say the second annual Food Shelf March is an effort to show that students today really do care and that they will take the time and effort to give what they can.
The fact that doing it kind of creates some unity among the schools. There's a lot of great kids at Central, Denfeld, and East, and it's really nice to hear them kind of combining forces here tonight for a good cause like this.
The march ended at the Lake Superior Plaza in downtown Duluth. Nearly 100 students gathered below the Christmas tree, held candles, and sang more carols.
Fun it is to ride and sing on sleighs out tonight. Oh! Jingle bells, jingle bells.
This event will also help create an awareness, according to Anderson, for many students who may not realize the need.
I think they don't, and hopefully things like this will help them kind of see the light on what actually the problems that there are here in the Duluth community with some hungry people we have.
Finally, the students, one by one tonight, dropped their donations of canned and boxed goods in a truck waiting nearby. From here, the donations will be taken to the Duluth Food Shelf. After another successful event, organizers say they plan to hold another march next year. In downtown Duluth, Patty Baker, TV6 News.